live. So, greetings from Tokyo. This is Dice Game, and we will begin very soon with regard to a live stream discussion on Superman 4 Quest for Peace. So, just give me 1 second and we will begin. I hope everyone is well. Sorry, I just wanted to do this with okay, good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Just wanted to take a picture of that. And so we will begin momentarily on Superman 4 The Quest for Peace. A very interesting film, I know. So we will do it momentarily. So just looking forward to getting your thoughts about this. Just let me just, there we go. Okay. And of course, the live chat is open for anyone who wishes to join with regard to this work or discussion on this work. So thank you so much for joining, and hope all is well. There we go. Good. Okay. I'll give it another minute, and then we will be underway. So let's see here. Oops. It's already December too. Can you believe it? Lots of things have been happening. I know, lots of things. So there we go. All right, so sorry, now I'm in the chat. So I see now Dan is here. Hello. Late night double feature picture show. Hello. Greetings from Yonkers, as you say. So it's nice to see you, my dear friend. Thank you so much for that. And I'm so sorry I haven't been able to get back to you, my dear friend. It's been a little bit busy of late, but I did get that message about 4 Flies on Gray Velvet. So thank you so much. Let's see. I didn't get a chance to put in any pre-order for that, so I don't know. I think the store's down, so hopefully I'll be able to catch that when it goes back up. But thanks so much for that. I appreciate it. Zyrother is here. It's nice to see you, my dear friend. The Hateful Edo is here. Hi from Italy, as you say. Hello, it's nice to see you. And Jared is here as well. I'm so glad to see you, my dear friend. I hope all is well. So we will begin, as I say, momentarily with regard to the discussion on the film Superman 4 The Quest for Peace. A very interesting film indeed. So looking forward to the discussion. I know it's a bit, it has a certain, shall we say, reputation in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Superman films. I get that, and it has a maybe a mystique about it, a quality about it that might be said to be somewhat, say, affected by, or maybe some people regard it, the level of, say, special effects that we see on screen, or the way in which the story unfolds. And maybe there's some moments that some feel might have required or might have benefited from a little bit more, say, fleshing out and the like. And I get those, and I'll try to discuss those where I can. But I'll also try to talk about the film, as I say, in the context of my own, as I describe it, my own cinema journey, including seeing it in the theater when I was a kid, and then just going from there. So it has a type of I regard it with a great deal of warmth, and I regard it with a great deal of good times. How should I put it? Good times in spite of it all. Let me put it that way. So, looking forward to this very, very much indeed. So, All right. So Finn is here. You say can't stay long, but thank you so much for stopping by, my dear friend. It's nice to see you, and warmest regards. And let's see. Uh, I'm just skipping down here. Say, Jared, you say this isn't the best film of the franchise. I know many consider it to be the Batman and Robin of the Superman franchise. Zyrother, you say. Certainly some WTF moments, but far less egregious than Supergirl had. That's very interesting. We shall talk about that, as I say, very soon. So hold on, just give me 1 second here, and then I will be underway. Great. Superman for the Quest for Peace. Yes, the Canon Group. Okay. I think we can begin. I think yes. So let us begin in earnest. So, thank you so much. Oh, Neo Blissy, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry. I did respond to your email. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks so much for that great message and also wonderful body of work that you provided. Well done. So let's see. And Gizmordor is here. It's nice to see you. And Zyro3 says, the Blu-ray looks spectacular, though. Thank you so much indeed. All right, so we can begin in earnest. So let us begin. So greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke. And I very much hope that this live stream finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. I find myself in particularly high spirits indeed, high flight experience or feelings, because here we are with yet another live stream discussion with respect to the films in this series of films, the Superman films, and specifically the Superman films, focusing in on or starring Christopher Reeve as Superman, as Kal-El, Clark Kent, etc. So, and we have been discussing all of the films in this world of these films, including, I should say, Supergirl. And now we come to the next installment of these films. And indeed, we understand that this will be the fourth and, yes, and final performance on screen in a feature length film of Christopher Reeve as Superman. And we have this film, Superman for the Quest for Peace. So, this is the topic of discussion today, and so I'm very honored to be able to join you and to hear from you with regard to this, as I say, oh so interesting film, Superman for the Quest for Peace. So, my dear friends, as we have always done, this is a live chat, and it's open to anyone who wishes to speak about this film. And of course, you can put your comments in the chat section, and we can go from there, my dear friends. So I should say that the just let me say a few things before we begin in earnest, which is that I'm not in any way holding myself out to be an expert on Superman for the Quest for Peace, or indeed I'm not at all an expert when it comes to any film that I'm talking about here on this channel. I come at this film and indeed other films as a fan, as someone who has seen the film many times. For Superman for the Quest for Peace, I should say, I saw it first in the theater when it was released back in whatever it was, 1987, right? So I went to the theater as a kid with my mom, so she took me to see it, and it was a very interesting experience indeed. But ever since then, I've been revisiting the film. I wouldn't call it my favorite Superman film ever, but I will try to make the points over the course of this discussion as to why I hold it with a great deal of warmth, and I enjoy it very much. So, but that's my way of saying that I am a fan, but I am not in any way an expert. Haven't done any background research to any great extent, nor am I involved with the production or anything like that. So that's my way to say that I don't have all the insight and I don't have all the knowledge or info with regard to this film or this body of work. So I won't be able to address or point out all the points that need to be addressed. But I will be talking about this, as I say, as a fan of this film. And with that point, of course, we will be talking about spoilers. And so anyone who has not yet seen Superman for the Quest for Peace, then you can, my strong, strong recommendation is maybe uh, you can turn off the live stream and then you can watch the film Superman for the Quest for Peace. And then after you've watched the film, you can always come back to this channel because either we'll still be live streaming or if we've stopped, this will be uploaded as a video after the fact. So you can, of course, come back anytime, and at which time I would be very, very happy to hear from you about your thoughts about Superman for the Quest for Peace, whatever they may be. If they are positive, wonderful. If they're negative, that's great. I'm glad, your feelings and your viewpoints and opinions are very, very important, whatever they may be. So if you have a negative take on a film, positive take on a film, lukewarm, somewhere in between, whatever the case may be, I want to hear about it, and I'd love to hear about it. So you don't have to like this film to still be able to comment. You, of course, comment on any feeling you have, my dear friends. Anything is legitimate and reasonable and valid, and I'm so happy to hear about anything you feel because your values and opinions are very important to me. So, so you can then come back to me at any time you want to talk about this. So that's the live stream setup for today. Also, the live chat is open, which means that which means that what was I saying? Which means that I just lost my train. Yes, which means, of course, that you can talk to me. You can talk to anyone else in the chat. My focus today will be on Superman for the Quest for Peace. So I don't. I will try to focus my energies primarily today on Superman and Superman 4. So if you have any questions for me of a non-Superman related nature, I might skip over those today. I hope you don't mind. I apologize in advance for anyone who feels like I've skipped over your comment or question. It's not my intent at all. I just want to focus on Superman 4, and also I am human, so I do make mistakes a lot, and I miss things and I miss people. So if I fail to read out your name or if I fail to read out your comment, I apologize in advance. Again, no ill will intended on my part. Please believe me. So and then also, as always, I'm relying on you, my dear friends. You have always, always helped me and kept the conversations going, and you have always treated me with a great deal of respect and politeness. And I'm so happy and so grateful to you for always giving me that type of treatment or regard. I'm very, very honored by that. And you always do that with other people. You talk and have discussions, and sometimes there might be disagreements, but you always treat each other with a great deal of mutual respect and understanding. And so I'm always thankful to all of you for that, and I know I can rely on all of you to continue on with that spirit of mutual respect during the course of the live chat and indeed beyond. So thank you so much in advance for always looking out for the best interests of talking about cinema. So at the end of the day, it's what it's all about, is it not? So thanks so much for that. Oh, I do. If there's time, again, I don't know. I have to leave at around 9, when it gets close to about 9:15, 9:20 or so my time. I might have to begin to prepare to go. But if we do have time afterwards, I can share it with you, just some one or two preliminary thoughts I have about the Sight and Sound. A lot of people have been asking me about, how do you feel about the Sight and Sound list, the greatest films of all time list from Sight and Sound? How do you, I can share with you some, maybe one or two very brief comments afterwards if you're interested. So just if you want to stick around afterwards, that's fine if we have time. But first of all, on the very, very forefront of my mind and in my heart right now is the discussion forthcoming right now here and now about Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Yes, yes. Let's go. Let's go. But before we go, let us go to, wait, before, that's a lot of goes. But before we go, let us go to the live chat and see what's going on here. So, Gizmortar says there are photos out there of Princess Diana meeting Mark Pillow in full Nuclear Man costume at this royal premiere of Superman 4. Very surreal. I hope she enjoyed it. That's really cool. I've never seen those. That's really cool. Oh gosh. Wow, Mark Pillow as Nuclear Man. Here's another fascinating character and portrayal. Now, what I'm about to say, I say with a great deal of admiration, and I say it in a positive, complimentary way. So I remember thinking when I first saw Nuclear Man, in the trailers were so cool, and they were just fighting, and the whole thing with going to the Great Wall of China, and the whole like that stuff there, that was really cool. And but I was thinking, oh, Nuclear Man, he looks kind of like, because it was in the 80s, and so you had, for those who were fans of, say, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, remember that cartoon, that great series, He-Man, and he looked like a cross. I'm talking about Mark Pillow's Nuclear Man. He looked like a cross between He-Man and Skeletor. It was like He-Man and Skeletor. And I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And so, but anyway, so I watched He-Man. I had the He-Man figures. Do you remember those He-Man figures with the battle armor damage, and you tap the chest plate and it would flip, and then you tap it again, it would flip again, and it would show battle armor damage. You remember those figures? I had those. Those are really cool. But in any event, yes, Mark Pillow reminded me of a cross between Skeletor and He-Man. Very cool indeed. And those nails, my goodness, talk about manicure from hell. Wow, amazing. So we'll talk about Nuclear Man very soon. Speaking of manicures from hell, right, and coiffed hair and the like, we have to talk about that scene with the in the museum with the strand of hair. How did he cut it? How did he cut it? So I have my theory about how Lex Luthor was able to cut that piece of hair from that 1,000-pound ball thing. So, any event, because that's Superman's hair, and the whole point of it was it's supposed to be this super strong thing. But how did he cut? But anyway, I have a theory about that. Let's see. So Jason, all right, Larry Vieira's here from Brooklyn. It's nice to see you, Jason, as always. Double Bill Movies is here. You say, hi, Daisuke. I loved seeing Superman 4: The Quest for Peace in the cinema. Not scary scenes, unlike Superman 3. I saw it in the theater too. It was very cool. And so. All right. Gizmortar says, I'm hoping for a Daisuke impression of Len. Oh, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. Boy, you're gonna get it. All right, that was my poor Lenny impression, but, I'm breakdancing. All right. So, Neo Blissy says, yes, and the funny thing about Lenny is that John Cryer would go on to play Lex himself in the Supergirl series. Makes me laugh every time I see the Lenny character in this film. Zyrother says, hi, I forgot about that. Love it. Double Bill Movie says, does watching any Superman movie make you feel like a kid again? All of them do. Including, yes, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Let's see. Neo Blissy continues, and the movie canon themselves released the same year this film came out. Zyroth says, wow, he just looked kind of like a crossover of those two. Dude of Steel. Boy, you're gonna get it. Yes. What does Lex Luthor say? The Dutch elm disease of his family. Wow. But Lex Luthor, I must say, Gene Hackman, it's so great. Gene Hackman is, I think, or Lex Luthor is particularly, he has a short temper in this film, I think more so than Superman the movie. I mean, in Superman the movie, Lex Luthor had a pretty short temper when it came to Otis and Miss Tessmonk, or perhaps even more so Otis. But here he seems to be quite he has the short fuse. I mean, he shouts a lot here. He shouts at those arms dealers, including, Porkins and Jim Broadbent of all people. Right? It's so cool. And then he shouts at them after they've given him all this money after quote unquote the death of Superman and all that, and he says it's a kind of a hostile takeover, and he says you're fired, and so, and he's angry at the people when he gets back into the what is it right? He's just be quiet. But I love it. I love that, and I love that almost manic energy that we see, and we see that come out in the context of the relationship between Lex Luthor and Lenny. Very, very interesting indeed. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Alan Smithy is here. Hello. It's nice to see Alan Smithy. Do you like Man of Steel? Oh, uh, it's a very it's a very interesting film. I'm not sure if I go with it all the way with some areas, but it is interesting. Neil Blissey X says continues referring to the Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren. Oh yes, yes, yes. I was referring to the animation, but of course um I also saw the film. Yes, yes. Uh, Gosh, I haven't seen it in quite a while. But when Dolph Lundgren says, or as He-Man, he said, "Victory." Oh, so cool, right? So cool. And then Evil Lynn is in us. Very cool. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So with this, my dear friends, yes, this I've just given a little bit of a maybe a preview as to my feelings about Superman for the Quest for Peace. I did mention here, as Double Bill Movies also mentioned in the great comments here, that like Double Bill Movies, and I'm sure like many others, I too saw this film, Superman for the Quest for Peace, in the theater. And prior to that, in the late 80s, and prior to that, it was, right, this was the time where you had, I mean, all that we had up to that, right? And I say all because it was still a lot. We had, of course, Superman, Superman 2, Superman 3, and then Supergirl. And you could now, at this time, go and rent them at the VHS store, your nearby VHS store, whatever the case may be, or watch them on TV, whatever the case may be. So there was a lot of time between, say, the last release of Superman 3 and Supergirl, and then this film. So it was quite a number of years. But then you started to get word, and you started to see these trailers, and you saw this Lex Luthor and Nuclear Man, and you started to get this buzz pick up that Superman would be back, and it was very, very exciting. And seeing at the time, there were TV shows much like the Siskel and Ebert TV show, movie review shows, where you could see, just prior to the release of or the same week as the release of the film, you could see the on television movie reviews for the film, and then so that's where I saw also more stuff prior to going to Superman for the Quest for Peace in the movie theater. So it was very, very fun times. And then, as I say, my mom took me to see Superman for the Quest for Peace, and it was it was quite, I must say, when we went in, I was so excited, and I admit to feeling somewhat deflated at the very start, because I could tell immediately, even back then, I remember this so clearly, I could tell immediately that it felt different from the opening credits. The credits, even to my 1987 eyes and ears, and I was born in 79, so right, I would have been what, 8 or something. So right, 7 or 8. And so so even to my 8-year-old eyes and ears, this felt different. The credits, the opening credits, and the way that the lettering looked, and it looked different. It didn't. I could tell it looked, dare I say it, it looked kind of cheap to my eyes and ears, and it didn't feel like the what I had been used to. Even with the credits of, say, and I say even, I thought the credits for Supergirl were really cool and inventive and distinct. And it was a direct comparison to, say, the credits for Superman or Superman 2 or even Superman 3, but it didn't have that same look to it. So I then that registered in my eyes and ears. Okay, we're gonna get something a little bit different. And indeed, the film progressed, and I don't have a full recollection of that movie going experience in my eyes and ears. When I was again 8, because it's not clear to me, but I do remember I had some moments where I felt it was. I felt you could tell that the special effects were a little bit, maybe how should I, but not to the level of, say, Superman or Superman 2 or even Superman 3 or Supergirl. It wasn't quite there, in some areas, and so you could feel that, and I certainly felt that. As I say, even when I was 8 years old, I could feel that, because I'd seen the other Superman films on VHS tape so many times by that point, so I could feel that. But I could also feel like there was a warmth to it, and there was a kind of tenderness to it on the one hand, and then there was still an excitement in the air, and in that movie theater, I should say that the theater was into it. Again, I don't remember all the details, but I remember, for example, people were just laughing out loud and cheering when Lacey Warfield says to her father, somewhat later in the film, she says, "Daddy, stuff it," and she just walks up because after the cape is there, and people think Superman is dead and all this, and and Lois is angry, and by that time Lacey is now very sympathetic with Clark and Lois and etc. So that she wants to be their friend, and so she's very angry now at Daddy. And so when she says to Daddy, "Stuff it," the whole theater erupted in applause. And I remember that. And so now I always think about that line, and I remember thinking, "Stuff it," like what does that mean? Stuff it. So, and I asked my mom later, "What does that mean?" And actually, she was a little bit angry at me for asking. Don't ask me that. So she asked me that. I never understood exactly what the phrase "stuff it" meant until maybe a little bit later in my lifetime. It was very memorable because, as I say, Lacey said it, and the whole theater was reacting. It was like, "Yeah, go for it. Yeah, say it." So that was part of the experience, which is I had a positive time at the movie. There was wonderful. People were and they were cheering, and when they were fighting around the world and in space and on the moon, and blowing Superman and turning him into ice, and he's exploding out of the ice and going into the volcano, and stopping the lava, and the bricks with all the things. And it was kind of ludicrous, and some of the powers make no sense, but the theater was into it, and the crowd was into it, and I was like, oh yes, this is really exciting. And then by the end, when you've got, and I remember too one other thing, which was the theater toward the end, when Nuclear Man, Mark Pillow, which is I love that. I love that. I love that name. It's a wonderful name. But when Nuclear Man um, goes to the Daily Planet for the final confrontation after Superman has revived himself, with another green crystal. I thought you could only get one green crystal, but and I thought he used it up in Superman too. But anyway, yeah, apparently there was a spare green crystal. But in any event, so it's like, oh, this is the only thing you can use, Kal-El. Use it wisely here. But oh no, here's another one. But anyway, just in case you need to use it again. But so he has another green crystal, but thank goodness, because he's able to, after getting that scratch on the back of the nectar, which is a pretty nasty scratch, he's able to not only get back on track, but get his cape back, and then also stand by as he watches Nuclear Man Mark Pillow just do a number on this like one block area, and destroying things. Nuclear Man, stop! Don't keep levitating those people slowly up and down, that sort of thing. So he was then he took them up, and then there was this whole thing about, yes, attack, fighting, and then defeating him momentarily in the moon, but then in the elevator, and then coming back, and then what is it? And then Nuclear Man is able to get Lacey, because he apparently has a certain kind of attraction or interest in Lacey. And then I remember when Nuclear Man was flying into space with Lacey in his arms, and I was thinking, is that possible? I mean, you're pretty far out of the atmosphere, so it seems like and I was like, oh, well, this is really weird. I thought that was really weird. It reminded me of a scene, very very similar, of a film that was released around the same time, maybe earlier. It was called. Has anyone ever seen the film Santa Claus the movie? Santa Claus the movie. So there was a scene similar, and I saw that in the theater too. Santa Claus the movie, and there was a scene similar in the film Santa Claus with Dudley Moore, and the whole, was it Yo, that one. So and the candy canes and John Lithgow. So, but I never looked at a candy cane the same way ever, after seeing not Superman, but Santa Claus the movie. But in any event, um, um, with a little bit of a Superman connection itself in terms of the direct. But anyway, there's a similar scene in Santa Claus the movie, as this scene with Nuclear Man and Lacey. And I never understood that. And she's like hanging on, and like, I'm gonna fall, but the Earth is so small and so far away. But then Superman is able to come in at the last minute and save Lacey and save the day. And then throw Nuclear Man into that reactor chute, whatever it is, and all the lights like so it's very exciting stuff. But it was a very so it was that type of stuff in the air when I was watching the film in the theater. So it wasn't, I would say, even to my 8-year-old eyes and ears, I could tell that it did feel a little bit different, and it did feel like it was maybe a slightly, maybe the grade of special effects level was different, on a slightly different level than, say, the level of special effects that we saw in the earlier films, and I could tell that immediately. But that notwithstanding, it was still a fun time at the movies, very much so. And it was only later that I began to appreciate the themes that it was tackling them. This was in the 80s, and so we were still within the climate of the Cold War. And so there were many Cold War films of the era that were then really coming into the mainstream consciousness, the mainstream cinema consciousness. I'll also bring up Rocky IV as well, which has the great line, right? If I can change and you can change, anyone can change. So it was in the spirit, and we had these moments too, especially early on, these earnest moments with Jeremy and Superman and the letter and the speech to the United Nations, and effectively, I'm going to try to rid the world of all nuclear weapons. And this had this air of not just earnestness and appeal, but also a sense of of a type of, how should I put it? It had a grand gesture about it, and I thought this was a really great move. This was such a great move, and when I think about it in the context of the trajectory of the Superman film series, I mean, this is really really big stuff. This is big stuff. This whole concept or point about Superman trying to get rid of all the nuclear weapons and throw them into the sun. It's a genius concept, first of all, because right, as Lex Luthor describes it, the sun is just like a nuclear reactor. It's like a nuclear bomb. It's just giving off this energy, which is a great way to describe, the sun, which is a burning star around which planets are revolving in terms of their orbit. And we get our energy, our life source, from the sun's energy that it's emitted. But it's also deadly and dangerous, and it also has this sort of metaphor for a nuclear power, which is a perfect way to describe it. It's so helpful, especially for, let's say, as I was a kid growing up. It was very easy to digest, I think, way to process what was going on, even when I admit to not fully appreciating the geopolitical ramifications of what was being discussed in a lot of the elements of Superman for the Quest for Peace. So it was very helpful in that way. And then it was a great image too, because you had Sun, Nuclear Man, and then you had the link too between what was the strength of Nuclear Man and what was the weakness of Nuclear Man, which was the sun or the lack thereof. And so when he's in shadow or darkness, then that would be where he would fail. And that was great too, because for every superhero or supervillain, you need strengths and you need weaknesses in order for it to be kind of a credible fight. And I thought that was great. That was really, really great. And then what was I saying? Oh, yes. So then going back to sort of the trajectory and how this is used, the geopolitical aspect of it, the plot to try to get rid of all the nuclear weapons. Now, I'll go to the live chat, but I want to say this before I forget, which is I find this plot point to be very, very important. Uh, it's very important, and it's consistent with what we have seen. I feel in what we've seen in all the films of Superman up to now, which is Superman has, or Kal-El has come to Earth, and he's come to Earth because Krypton has been destroyed, due to the great efforts of Jor-El. He has come to Earth as a baby or as a young boy, a little boy, and grew up Smallville and the Kents and to Clark Kent. And then Superman, with the rays of the sun being his power, the yellow sun providing his power and sustenance. And that's why he has the powers that he does on Earth, which is also an interesting concept. Now, I wish that Superman for the Quest for Peace had maybe built that up a little bit more. The fact that the yellow sun is what gives Kal-El his powers. I don't think that Superman for the Quest for Peace built that up. It would have been a really cool link, the yellow sun gives Superman his powers just as the yellow sun gives Nuclear Man his powers. And so there is a further parallel. I understand the parallel in terms of the DNA from the hair strand. And so Nuclear Man is, in a sense, kind of like a Superman clone. So in that way, he is of the same level power-wise in terms of Superman is. But I would have liked to have seen maybe a bit more metaphorical or thematic discussion in terms of the central role of the sun vis-a-vis each of these superhero and supervillain respectively. But be that as it may, it is part of the myth and legend of Superman, the yellow sun, the importance of the yellow sun. But he's come to Earth, and at the first film, we remember that it was the whole concept of he is a quote unquote visitor, and he looks like a human being. He won't be a human being, and that's what Laura, his mother, is worried about. But Jor-El is kind of understands that he will be stronger, and that will be his way of protecting himself. And then but when one of the rules, the golden rule, is not to interfere in the course of human history. And so this is a concept that we see Superman essentially break in the earlier films. But why does he break but why does he break that rule? Let's remember that. We'll go back to that in a second. But remember this rule. So the rule is essentially he cannot interfere in the course of human history. That's not his place because he is a quote unquote visitor. This rule is front and center in this film, once again, Superman for the Quest for Peace. And thus it becomes a really important part of Superman's, I would say, struggle. Because linked to that, too, is this idea of Superman being a type of ally of all humanity, not just one person a la Lois Lane, but of all humanity. And this is the choice that he must make. Now, it is such an interesting concept that I think is being portrayed here in Superman for the Quest for Peace in this way, because if we recall in Superman, it could be said, breaks this rule in order to essentially save Lois. So he breaks this rule in order to what one might say, serve a need or desire or reason that is wholly his own personal reason, that is not for the sake of all humanity per se, but maybe primarily for the sake of his own wanting to save Lois. So that's his own personal intimate reason. It doesn't make it any worse or any less important. No, no, no. It's very, very important, and it's wonderful. It's poetic. It's dynamic. It's brilliant. But the reason it can be said is he wants to save Lois. So that's his own intimate, personal reason. And he takes this choice. Here for Superman 4, what do we see? We see it kind of flipped. We see that he makes this choice about wanting to intervene in the course of human events, a la get rid of the nuclear weapons of the world, and in order to avert nuclear disaster. And the destruction of civilization as we know it, which is the end result, right? So, what MAD, mutually assured destruction. So, this is the concept, and therefore he breaks this rule after much consideration, after much pondering, and much thought and debate and struggle. And you see Kal-El struggle because this is the rule. And he can't break it, even when you have those kind of random people in the Fortress of Solitude, which is still there, and the betrayed, all this. Who are these guys? I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah. But anyway, it's so dark and it's kind of you look scary. Just relax. Okay, okay. I won't break the rule. I won't break the rule. But anyway, so the what was I talking? So yes, so he breaks the rule after much consideration, after thought from say Jeremy in the letter, and the United Nations speech comes a little bit later. Of course, his interaction with Lois Lane, trying to work it out, and his love of humanity. He breaks his rule. In other words, he intervenes for the sake of not just one person, not just for his own intimate personal reason, but for the sake of humanity writ large, it could be said. So this is a huge leap. This is such a huge leap. And in that way, Superman for the Quest for Peace is so important. It is so important not just in, say, the further adventures of Lois and Clark, in a manner of speaking, but it's also very important because it is a kind of one might call a trajectory in the evolution of how Superman views his place in the world, and how he has in many ways come to terms with his own, say, uh, maybe inability to fulfill his maybe his love, feelings of love and affection for Lois. And we see that even in this film, how it's not fair. He wanted to have a life with her, but he couldn't. He had to love all humanity, which is such a tender moment. It's an acknowledgement, remember, of how Superman and Superman 2 came out in terms of their relationship. But we see that return in what I think is a lovely flying moment there. I know the flying effects are a bit ropey, I get it, but when Superman and Lois are together one more time, it's really quite lovely. So, and we get that, you don't know my name. Yes, I remember everything. Kal-El. I remember everything. I love how Margot Kidder says the name Kal-El. I remember everything. And then we still have another magic kiss, which is great, which is because it's a wonderful recalling of what we'd seen in past films. But it is an acknowledgement and understanding that in many ways Superman has, I don't want to say grown up, but Superman has come to terms on the one hand with what he needs to do in terms of his relationship with Lois, but so he's in a sense preserving that rule, that rule of Krypton. Don't put one person above other people. But he breaks the rule at the same time, which is don't intervene in the course of human events. And he does so not just for one person, but he does it for all of humanity, which I think is such a great role reversal. I can't begin to tell you just how brilliant I think that is. But in any event, so that is in a nutshell how important I think Superman 4 is. And so that's the feeling that I have in my head, in my heart, whenever I regard this film. In that spirit, now I will try to continue on with more comments. But before that, my dear friends, I don't want to monopolize the conversation any more than I have already. So I will go to the live chat. All right. Let's see, just scrolling down here. Sorry. So Doctor Impossible of Counterpunch 1984 is here. Hello. It's nice to see you. Let's see. Neil Blissey continuing on with comments about canon films. Yes. Gizmortar says it blows my mind that Golan and Globus managed to get Reeve, Kidder, and Hackman back for this film. I understand that, yes, when Gene Hackman decided to come back, it was it made it an attractive project for the rest of the cast, including Jackie Cooper and right. So it was great, great to see that. Cyruther says the budget of 17 million compared to Superman 3, 39 million, and Supergirl 35 million. Yes, the budget was I understand reduced considerably, and also we saw the running time also reduced considerably. That's the understanding. So one of the things that is so great about, say, Blu-ray set like this, sort of official release, you can see some of the missing footage or the deleted scenes, what could have been, in terms of there's some really interesting subplots. Let me put it that way. Characters, even whole characters that were just cut out. So could have been a very quirky. There was some really quirky things that are going on here, but. Nico is here. Hello, and you say, I wish the box set included the theatrical version of Superman 2, as it's my favorite version of that film. The theatrical version, I think it does it not? I think that it does include Superman 2. You're referring to the Richard Lester version, right? I think actually this box set I think does. I think so. It has both versions of Superman 2, or when I say both versions, I should say the theatrical version, and then it has the Richard Donner concept, and it doesn't have any kind of quote unquote extended version, like TV version or extended version, but you do get deleted scenes section. So let's see. Gizmortar says, in addition to some creative control over Superman 4, but budget restraints meant that he didn't quite get the film he'd envisaged. Zyrother says, I compare it favorably to Jaws 3. Weird and confusing at times, but fun to watch. Double Bill says, I like Nuclear Man's footprints. Oh, me too. I love those footprints. Yes. Yes. No, you have my voice. Yes. I'm Frico. Yes. Not freak, but Frico. Yes, I am Frico. All right. And Matthew Lockwood is here. Hello. Yes. Jason says, great. Henry Mancini scored Santa Claus the movie. Jonas says, I have high fondness for Santa Claus the movie. I saw it in the cinema with my parents. As did I. As did I. Yes. As I say, and I had a little book. It was Santa Claus the movie, the movie tie-in book. It was like a photo book or something. And as I say, I never could ever look at a candy cane the same way again. It's really quite something. One other thing too, which John Lithgow. John Lithgow has so many great roles, and I'm doing this stuff. Brian De Palma, John Lithgow, Brian De Palma, of course. So many things to be said. Like Blowout or Raising Cain or something. But for me, perhaps the shining John Lithgow performances in Santa Claus the movie. Yeah. All right, scrolling down. Sorry, let's see. Dr. Impossible Counterpunch 84 talks about Reeve and Kidder on the set. Superman 4, and you say, Kidder didn't talk to Reeve for many years afterward. I admire Reeve for that incredible performance as evil. Superman 3, brilliant. Yes. I think Reeve's performance is quite brilliant. And I should say, too, this brings me to another thing I wanted to speak about with Superman 4, which is another thing which I really like, which I find to be another progression, in a manner of speaking, from the first films. is the relationship between Clark and Lois. Not Superman and Lois, but Clark and Lois. Now, in the first film, we had Clark Kent and Lois meeting for the first time, and Lois kind of dismissing him, kind of treating him not so well, maybe thinking a little less of him, etc. And they do go out for a little, I guess, date, I suppose. But what do they go? As Clark, oh, we're going for a hamburger or something. So it's something like that. And then Superman 2, we get a little bit of the same, that Clark is someone to kind of be, oh, can you get orange juice, freshly squeezed, or I want a hamburger at 9 a.m. So and all this stuff. So, or maybe in the I'll say, yeah, I'll pay for the pizza. It's that sort of thing. So, isn't he a nice guy? So there's that. But she's still somewhat dismissive, one could say. In Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, what I love is there is still that kind of charm, or that kind of Lois look. Maybe not, I don't want to say looking down on Clark, but there is a kind of respect there, which I really, frankly, admire so much. When Lacey's talking about Clark and asking about Clark, uh, you know, Lois says he's kind of this small town schoolboy charm, and I don't want him to change. I like him the way he is. And there are some scenes between Clark and Lois that I really enjoy. There's a sense of them being like real friends. Lois isn't looking down on him, but she likes him. She likes Clark. And when Clark is sick or Clark hasn't been out, she goes to his place, and it's that intuition that is at play. And I think what it is part of it could be, in terms of the plot, that there is something deep down within Lois that maybe she knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And so, the magic kiss maybe isn't fully, say, wiping clean the data banks. Maybe there's a little bit of memory there, which makes sense, which makes perfect sense. Or maybe that's something that Kal-El did on purpose, maybe leave something a little bit behind, just as a kind of echo of a memory. Who knows? But what that means is, if that's the real reason or not, but what that means is ultimately, Lois is, for all intents and purposes, one can say, a little bit nicer to Clark than she arguably was in the first two films, which I love. I really love that. I love that dynamic and relationship, and she is protective of him, especially when Lacey comes in, and I wouldn't call her jealousy, but just protective. Not in any way kind of love triangle-y jealousy. It's just earnest. Hey, he's my friend. I like him, so just treat him okay. Okay, so that kind of stuff I love. I love that. So kudos to Reeve and Kidder for getting that spark. And the spark is there. I really do feel that the spark is definitely there. It's great to see them back like this. I should say too that I made a comment earlier about then Lois and Superman, and this idea too about how Clark Kent seems to go to Lois. I'm not sure if this is the if this is the first time that Superman and Lois have talked like this intimately since, say, the end of Superman 2. So I'm not sure. I don't have those details because they didn't talk intimately like this in, say, Superman 3. We didn't see it anyway. And so are we to assume, therefore, that this is the first time in ages since they've talked intimately like this? I'm not sure. It could be. Or maybe they have done this regularly. Who knows? Maybe Clark Kent visits Lois Lane and reveals that he's Superman. They go flying and they have a good time. They go out on a date and they come back and he kisses her and another man, and he frees. So maybe he's done it many times. Who knows, right? You can always clear the decks of your data cache, I suppose, but to use, say, modern day parlance. But or maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe this is the first time that he's met her in a long time. In any event, I think the latter is actually more romantic than the former. But the point that I wanted to bring up here is it's lovely to see this almost closure in a way because you could say that Superman 2 ended in a kind of cliffhanger. It ended in a kind of way where it was, oh gosh, if only they could figure out a way to kind of, you know what I mean? But now we see them, and when they're back on that, on that, on the outer patio there, I suppose. And they say, I understand, and she's saying, I remember everything. And he says, human, it's not fair. I have to follow. I have to be the ally of all humanity, not just one. Sometimes it's not fair, and he's acknowledged it's not fair. But he says this is but you can tell that they have resigned themselves, and I think they understand that this is what they need to do, and they've done it in a way that is on their terms, and you can see. I love to how Lois is she seems very accepting of this. She said, I understand, it's okay. And she's smiling, and it's not like the moment where she is really heartbroken. And maybe she is deep down, but there's a type of understanding which is, I think, all the more romantic and so powerful. And it makes, therefore, that scene between the two of them as they're flying. Again, I understand it's kind of ropey. You can see the outline of them as they're flying. What is it? The back screen projection or whatever it is, or the optical printing or whatever it's called, and they're flying through, like, so they're in the city and they're suddenly flying over like I don't know, horses or something, and then there's in snow, and then suddenly they're the Golden Gate, and then they're, yeah. So I get all that, and it is kind of right when you look at it, especially when compared to the majesty of, say, the first film. Can You Read My Mind? It maybe for some people it doesn't compare. It doesn't compare. But there is this magic of seeing the two of them back together again like this, especially after all of the high emotional stakes of Superman and Superman 2. And then to see this resolution, and in many ways, it's kind of like the end conclusion, the roundup, or the resolution of that arc that was begun in Superman and then continued with such force in Superman 2. And now we see a type of epilogue in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. I thought it was great. I thought it was really great. And I saw it again very recently on the Blu-ray for preparation for this live stream. And it got me. It really got me. That scene got me. So, yeah. So yes, I get it. It's kind of rope, especially when you see there's a lot of special effects of people flying in the air and their legs are kind of like going kind of like they're kind of doing a kind of going like this. So it looks a little bit, maybe it looks a little bit funny. Sometimes you see a lot of flips of Superman or Nuclear Man a little bit later when their legs are kind of sprawled out. So there's a little bit of that here with Lois and Superman flying. So it might not be the best looking flying scene out there in the Superman film catalog. I totally get that, and I can see that viewpoint. But in terms of a type of heart and emotion, excuse me, in terms of a heart or emotion, it's there, and especially in keeping with the idea that this can be seen to be a resolution of the relationship that we saw from 1 and 2. And then it will go into the idea of Superman and Lois having a type of post breakup relationship going forward. I mean, this is kind of cool, I'm thinking about maybe some of the breakups that I've had in my life since I was, going, out with people, and breakups are pretty hard things. I don't know about you, but breakups are like devastating for me. So I wish all breakups were like this type of breakup, because they're so friends and they're kind of happy and all this. I suppose maybe the thing about this type of breakup is I would need to have the power of the magic kiss. I don't think my kisses are that powerful or that magical, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if only I could have the power to be able to kiss someone to make them forget and lose their. I don't know. I don't know if that'll be a good thing or a bad thing. Like, Like if someone says to me, "Oh, I love you," and oh, kiss, my wife says, "Oh, I love you," kiss, and then after the kiss, she says, "Who are you? Why am I?" So she forgets even that she loves. But that would be kind of like terrible, actually. But in any event, um, yeah. What was I saying? Um, what was I talking about? Oh yes, yeah. So Lois and Clark and Lois and Superman, and then not to mention, of course, the great double date scene, which is so cool. And we haven't spoken yet directly about Lacey and all this. We'll talk about that. But before that, my dear friends, let's go back to the chat. All right. Okay, so let's scroll down. Let's see. Harry Marshall is here. Hello. It's nice to see you. Gizmortar says, I really like the scene on the old Kent farm at the start where Clark Kent says he always felt a real farmer. With the old crib that Jonathan Kent built, all that stuff is great. And he kicked the crib and yes, and going back to the fall. Yeah, those scenes were really great. I really agree. Yeah. Scrolling down, Vern is here. It's nice to see you, Vern. It's always nice to see you. Feels like it started the trend of heroes fighting facsimiles of themselves, a trend that Marvel have really gone to town on. Although we had, of course, we say facsimile, you're talking about Nuclear Man being a type of clone of Superman, right? So, um, we did, of course, have the Superman 3, which is it's kind of different. I understand, but incidentally, so it brings me to my theory about how did Lex Luthor, how was he able to cut the piece of hair if the hair is supposed to be this strong? I think maybe he had a little bit of kryptonite left over from Superman the movie somewhere. He kept it in like a lead case or so. Maybe it's in the lining of the lead case. So he lined the cutters there with a bit of the kryptonite that he was able to cut. That's my theory. But anyway, Dexter64 is here. Hello from Athens, Georgia. It's nice to see you. Dr. Impossible of Thunders. Oh, you know Dennis Potter as well. Well done. Yes. Jared, Nuclear Man's name is a bit on the nose. Yes, it could be. Yes. What would be an interesting, maybe not so on the nose name for Nuclear Man? It would be, I don't know, like maybe what would be an interesting name, uh like nuclear or something, nuclear. I don't know. Yeah. Um, let's see. Double Bill says, I must go to sleep. Have a good live stream and I'll watch the rest catch up. Say Trevor. So nice to see you, Double Bill. Talk to you again very soon. David is here. Hello from Raleigh, North Carolina. Nice to see you. Neo says the needs of the many. Yes, indeed. Well said. Zyrother. Superman usually refrains from getting involved with how nations govern and protect themselves. This kind of storyline of heroes intervening to an extreme is explored in the Injustice storyline. Cooper Glover is here. I just watched the film. Something came up. That's why I'm late. Catch up on the early part of the stream. No problem. No problem. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Richard Pye is here. I always felt that Jor-El was a bit of a hypocrite in demanding his son that he not be in the relationship. What a thing to ask of your son that he not be with the one he loved. This is something that actually I share in your sentiment very much, Richard. Especially when, right, I kind of understand he's doing it because he loves his son so much. He's doing it because he must, right? This is something that is for the greater good, something for the greater good. But right, Jor-El was he was in a relationship, right, and he had a family. So like, all right, what gives? So, is it all right? So, but anyway, yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand. Um, and right, we understand too that right, there is a kind of um, well, anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too into the weeds there in terms of what I was about to say, but I guess my point is I agree with you 100%. Actually, 100%. I think there could have been a way for Superman, Kal-El, to have been with Lois or to have been with the one that he loves, and still carry out quote unquote his duties of as in terms of in terms of his role with respect to his time on Earth and humanity. Now, what I was about to say, what would have been complicated would have been if he was able to be with Lois on the one hand, and then he meets, say, um, goes to Smallville and meets, Lana and what goes on there now. Lacey's going on, so there's a lot of right. So it's like, uh, um, he loves one woman, but there are actually a number of women in Kal-El's life or Clark Kent's life. So that would have been, I guess, pretty interesting. But we'll see. But yes, I understand exactly what you're saying. Scrolling down, Access Mundi is here. It's nice to see you. Um, I remember the Razor bubblegum trading cards for Superman 2. Oh yes. When you say Razor bubblegum, are you referring to the fact that the bubblegum was really like super hard and it was like chipped? Yeah, yeah. Okay, if that's the case, I understand. Yeah. Um, Scrolling down. Um, Richard Pine continues Criterion Man and a new superhero C on the shirt there. Yes, Criterion Man. Uh, who'd be Criterion Man's nemesis here, much like Nuclear Man? So Lex Luthor fights Criterion Man, and Lex Luthor steals Criterion Man's piece of hair and goes and creates, I don't know, like what would it be? I don't know. I don't know, like, Studio Canal Man. So Criterion Man fights Studio Canal Man, and they fight in this space, and Criterion Man tries to say, give me back the third man. I want the third man. And Studio, no, it's mine. I'm gonna keep it for so that sort of thing. Or that would be, but anyway. The man who fell to it. So yeah, so that would be cool. That's, Pierre LeFou, yes, at last. Just that sort of thing. So that would be cool. That would be cool. But oh well. Yeah. Oh well. Let's see. Yes, Gizmortar says some awful effects just after Nuclear Man tackles Superman off the balcony as they fight, and also at the start with Superman flying off down the subway tunnel. It's all part of the charm. That is a great way of putting it. It's part of the charm. Yes, indeed. One can say it is part of the charm. There is this the subway scene, for instance, early on. It's nice to see Lois studying French again, right? Because I think she was speaking French a little bit at the start of Superman 2, because when she went to Paris with the bomb, hydrogen bomb! Are you sure to blow everything? Yes. Qu'est-ce que c'est le mot pour stairs? Stairs. S-T-A? Mademoiselle, right? So she did speak a little bit of French there. So maybe she is wanting to pick it up again. Of course, she was going to go to France, but then that trip was called off, as we know, a little bit later in terms of her reporting. So she's studying up on French, and then she goes in the train and she sees Clark there. It's nice to see that report. And Clark says, "I missed the train," whatever. And then the train's off, and she's help. And then here's another disaster averted once again because of the Superman saving the day with this sort of electricity step punch zap thing. And it's still, he wants to assure everyone that the public transit is still the safest way to travel. Thank you very much. And so upright as always. It is a bit of a quick sequence. It kind of just happens and then it's finished like that, and he just flies and goes and stops it, and that's it. So it does feel a bit rushed. I get it, but that is part of the charm. I agree. Also, the bits, as I said, as you mentioned, Nuclear Man fighting in the free fall, and it's kind of, and then going from place to place, and then right, and that it does feel a bit, kind of all over the place. But that again, that's part of the charm. You're right. Okay, scrolling down. Let's see. Oh, Mesh is here. It's nice to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's nice to see. I know uh, you've mentioned that there's been some issues in terms of the power sometimes, but thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's always nice to see you, my dear friend. Um, Dr. Impossible continues, the Kidder was Lois and no one else comes close to Reeve. It's a shame that Reeve got partially typecast in Superman. Reeves was great and Death Trap and Noises Off. Also, I should point out there is a film which is called Remains of the Day, and based upon the novel by Kazuo Ishiguro. And it features Christopher Reeve in a kind of supporting role, but it is such an important role, and it is such a great performance by Christopher Reeve. Oh, it's so great! It's so great. I mean, people speak about Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins, and rightly so. It's big praise to those performances, but Christopher Reeve is so good in Remains of the Day. I don't want to get into too much, but he says in that film, I love that line, and he says, "You are all of you amateurs. Here is to the professionals." Oh my gosh, he's so good in that film. But anyway, um, all right. So let's see. Cooper Glover says Dice gave the scene with Superman giving the peace speech at the end. The film reminds you of Chaplin's The Great Dictator. Oh, interesting. Yes. Um, let's see. Cooper Glover goes on Vinegar Syndrome Man. Yes. Or Zyro the Criterion Man fights Public Domain Man. Or Neo's or Kino Lorber Man. Let's Jared continues. This seems to be a situation where the film may be so bad it's good. Could be the best way to look at it for some. Let's see. Scrolling down here. Oh, Zyrother continues. I think the negative reviews are too harsh. It's got problems, but it's hardly one of the worst films ever made. Let's see. Richard, I think Reeve would have had a second win as an actor. Right. He was too good. Yeah, he was so good. Oh, so good. Um, oh yes, I think Reigns of the Day. Does that have a? It had a 4K release, or it's going to. I forget. But oh, it's such a good film. But oh gosh, that really is a good film. But it's a really good book too. But actually, I think the film does something with the book that actually it does something with the book so clever. I love the book, but the film I think just edges it slightly. But anyway, what was I saying? What was I saying? Oh yeah. So now going back to Superman for the Quest for Peace. Now, I've spoken a lot about Superman, Lois, Clark. Now let's talk about. I've spoken a little bit Lex Luthor. I haven't spoken about the Warfields, right? We have uh, Lacey Warfield, and right, Daddy Warfield. Um, I always want to say Daddy Warbucks, but it's a Daddy Warfield. Lacey and right, and father, and the taking over the Daily Planet and turning it into a kind of like what we might understand to be maybe kind of this tabloid sort of thing, or sort of a real corporate takeover. And it's interesting too, because we do see how this type of change of ownership of publications may have a significant impact, and that is true indeed, even now in the present day. And so, but here we have this type of situation where the maybe the philosophy of the Daily Planet, as embodied or personified by people like Lois Lane and indeed Perry White, is seen to be coming under threat from the acquisition by Warfield and Company. Now, this poses, I think, a really interesting dynamic because, first of all, it's great to see the Daily Planet offices again, but they've been upgraded in a manner of speaking, so it looks kind of old but new, which I like. I like that feel, familiar but there's some new touches. Like there's a lot of wood paneling along the walls. It seems, and there's a lot of glass. I mean, there were before, I suppose, but there's a lot of. I guess what they needed was, after all that stuff that happened with Zod and Non and Ursa destroying the place, and then later, I suppose, with the computer bingo machine destroying everything, I suppose, in Superman 3. they needed to upscale the offices. They look really nice. Those offices are really cool and chic looking. But then we have, right, Warfield's coming in. Now, Lacey is therefore entering the picture. Now, here we have the introduction of the Lacey character, and this is Mariel Hemingway's character. And I must say that her character brings a type of, I mean, she's coming from very wealthy situation, we understand, and that therefore this brings to the fore a type of opposites attract situation, because she seems to be therefore very attracted almost immediately to Clark Kent, maybe for a number of reasons. I mean, Clark Kent, I think, is very charming in this film. I mean, he's not, I wouldn't call Clark Kent a kind of bumbling fool as he was, say, especially in the first one. Here, he's a really charming guy. Yeah, he always was a charming guy, but in particular, he's a charming guy here. I mean, when we see him in the farm, back in Smallville, he's got this. He's really like wow. This guy's not in any way. He's not like type of bumbling fool. He is a real earnest guy, which is really great. And then, so you get that sense of earnestness of Clark Kent, the character, which is, I think, one of the reasons maybe why Lacey's attracted to him, and I think for good reason. And so that it gives the relationship between it. My point is that it gives a relationship between the two of them, I think, a sense of gravitas, or a sense of believability. You could really believe that Lacey would fall for someone like Clark Kent. Not because she wants. Maybe part of it is because she wants to prove that she can win over any man, I suppose. But I don't think that's the entire equation. I think there's a real sense of her having genuine feelings. I think it's definitely there. So it makes the relationship, I think, not just believable and accessible to us, the viewer, but also it makes us want to root for that relationship in a certain way, especially because we understand that Lois is not in love with Clark Kent, but she's in love with Superman. So it becomes this interesting love triangle that isn't a love triangle, if you know what I mean, which is so brilliant. It's so brilliant. So it makes you want to root for both relationships at the same time. It makes you want to root for Lacey and Clark, and also makes you want to root in a way for Lois and Superman. And therefore, that brings us to the great scene in this film. One of the great scenes in this film. And of course, I'm referring to the aerobic scene where Clark Kent is doing aerobics with Lacey. Oh, no pain, no gain. No, I'm kidding. That's not the great. I mean, it's not a bad scene, the aerobic scene. It's not my favorite scene. This is just a joke. My favorite scene, or one of my favorite scenes, is of course the double date scene. Now, just before we get to the double date scene, for anyone who is championing the aerobics scene, if you think I'm too harsh on the aerobic scene, it's just my way of talking in jest. I mean no disrespect. I think the aerobic scene is fine. I am a big admirer of aerobics and working out. I don't mean that. I don't mean that in any way sarcastically. Actually, I mean that earnestly. I do. I actually take aerobics classes here in Japan, very proudly so, and they're very difficult, and they have a great workout volume, and there's a great level of high intensity, workout training, and it's a great way of losing weight and also maintaining muscle tone, etc. So I take aerobics classes. I attend aerobics classes maybe twice or three times a week. We have to wear masks during the class. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but you've gotten used to that. But the point is that I am fully with Clark and Lacey when it comes to it's not quite the same. The aerobics classes I take that I attend here aren't like in any way like this aerobics class that Clark Kent is doing, but I understand the spirit of what he's doing. So I actually love that scene. And I love the bit where you have this kind of scrawny looking, oh, no pain, no gain. Oh, what a jerk. What a jerk. That's why, gosh, I don't like him. I like you, Clark, but that's why you're not talking. Oh, no, Lacey, I like you. I'm just busy. That's all. Oh, great. Can we have a double date then? Oh, yeah. Oh, no pain, no gain. So that's how that whole the double date situation arises. And he actually is very dangerous with the weights. You kind of say, oh, here's the weight. Here, catch it. Oh, my gosh. You could have killed him. But anyway, Right, but as he says, no pain, no gain. So in any event, that's the whole setup, I should say, for the for the um, uh, what is it? Oh, before we get to the double eight scene, I should say one other thing, that if you're looking for some great aerobics scenes, I can direct you to two other places which I think have some great aerobics scenes. One is a film called um, Ninja 3, The Domination. I mean, we're speaking of canon films. I think there's a nice connection there. So Ninja 3, The Domination, where aerobics is actually a pretty big, significant part of the plot. And then also, it's not a film, but I'm a big fan of BTS. I love BTS. And there's a bit where BTS, what's his name? I always forget. James Corden, I think. I get the name right. Is from several years back, but James Corden takes BTS to the dance or aerobics class that he attends, and so you have Jimin, or you have the BTS members teaching the class some dance moves, and you have in particular Jimin. If you know BTS, Jimin is teaching the class there some of the moves for the choreography for the song. Um, on, that song, which is a really really difficult choreography. That's really cool. So you can check that out on YouTube. I think it's the one where it's like carpool karaoke, and then at the end of that they go visit um, James Corden's like gym or something, and then they have that thing. So that's really cool. So that's a shout out for anyone who's interested in any fun aerobics themed YouTube videos or movies. But in any event, now it's setting up for the great double date scene. Now, if I were Clark Kent or if I were Kal-El, I would never have agreed to this. I don't know what he was thinking in terms of agreeing to this. I don't know what he was thinking in terms of, like, I would have called it off. I would say, sorry, Lacey, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I need to call it off. I'm really sorry. Can we do a rain check, or can we reschedule or something like that? I would have called it off. I would have said, Superman can meet, have the interview. Lacey can be there. It could be three of them. I would not have done this at all. It's just too much of a headache. So I don't know why he said yes. I don't know why he went through with this, but bless him for doing so, because it provides great cinema fodder. It provides wonderful display of cleverness and wittiness, and good humor and broad physical comedy. And it feels like something out of, I don't know, like a Howard Hawks movie. I mean, that's some of the great stuff about the Richard Donner Superman films. Was it was like Howard Hawks. It was like oh gosh, His Girl Friday or something. This feels very much like that type of screwball comedy hijinks, and it's done so well and so brilliantly, and it's done too in a way where you see the two of them, Lacey and Lois, in their own ways, caring for the guy that they're with. So Lois is like, that's an entrance, and so she's so happy, and there's more spring in her step when Superman is in the picture. But then Lacey's more interested in what Clark's doing. Is he okay? Is he okay? Is he going to be okay? And then, can he get on the elevator? He can't get up on that sort of thing. So so I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it at all. If I were Clark Kent, I'd have just canceled. But good on him for agreeing, because it does provide, as I say, one of the great scenes. It's really really clever. It has, as I say, a sense of the screwball comedy, and it is to maybe the ultimate in terms of the further progression of this. I don't want to call it split personality, but we have seen in the past, right? I think when we understand that Clark Kent is the disguise for Kal-El, and we understand too that I think. Uh, I think there is a way in which this has progressed. Well, for Superman 2, there's the discussion in the Fortress of Solitude between Lois and Superman, where Superman is regarding Clark Kent as another person, and Lois is saying, but isn't Clark Kent you? I don't understand, because Superman says, or Kal-El says, if it weren't for Clark Kent, she says, it must be hard being Clark Kent, and then Superman responds in Superman 2. He says, not really, because I kind of like it, because if it weren't for Clark Kent, I wouldn't have met you. And then she says, but he is you. I don't understand. And it's confusing. And Superman says, not for me, it isn't. For the first time in my life, everything's clear. So he kind of evades the question. Why? But aren't you two the same? Superman and Clark Kent, aren't you the same? They are, but they aren't. And we get this also further embodied in a way that I actually think it works so brilliantly. In many ways, perhaps even more so for me than this conversation in the Fortress of Solitude. That is the whole setup in Superman 3. Bad Superman, kryptonite with tarred kryptonite, turning by Richard Pryor, turning Kal-El into sort of bad Superman. And then this whole thing with the battle between Clark Kent and Superman. This is very important. It's not Kal-El and Superman, it's Clark Kent and Superman. So this is very important. And why is it important in Superman 3? Because it's Clark Kent whose character is being, say, nurtured and loved and regarded by Lana, right, in Superman 3. So this is very, very important indeed in that regard. Now we jump to Superman 4, where we have yet another character, much like Lana in Superman 3. We have a character in Lacey who is regarding Clark Kent in this personal and intimate way, or potentially so, or perhaps wanting to do so. And not only do we have that occurring, but we have that occurring at the same time as the Lois and Superman relationship. Because in Superman 3, we were focusing on Clark Kent. Lois was, right, she was, for most of the film, not even there. She was there, and then she went to, right, she showed her bikini, and then she came back at the end. But she was not there for the bulk of the film. Now she's here. So now we have the opportunity of what we saw built in Superman 2 and Superman 3. Now we have combined in the same space. Superman for the Quest for Peace. Now, granted, it could have gone, you're right. I, for one, would have been so fascinated to have seen it go in all the directions. I mean, the possibilities, I think, are endless. What could have been done? How could have this been played out further? What could have been the relationship between Clark Kent and Superman? Would there have been this? We see it in the context of the screwball comedy scene, which is brilliant, by the way, but could it have gone in other places? Sure, it could have. Sure, it could have. But be that as it may, this is where we have them at the same time, as it were. They're almost battling each other, and in this way, they can't coexist harmoniously. When one is there, the other is by definition not there, and vice versa, which I think is it's the great dynamic. And so we see it here within the same space, and it is awesome. It is really awesome. So and so I regard it not just as a great showcase for all the participants and actors in question, Margaret Kidder, Hemingway, and Christopher Reeve, but also in terms of the progression of the Clark Kent Superman dynamic, or Clark Kent Kal-El dynamic, that, as I said, we've seen Superman and Superman 2 and then Superman 3. Now it's a progression, I would say, in Superman for the Quest for Peace. And it's really great that way. All right, so let's see. Okay. Oh, Chronologic is here. Great to see you. Scrolling down. Oh, Sam Krauser is here. It's nice to see you as well. Oh, great. Oh, Chronologic, so fantastic. Well done. It's scrolling down here. Sorry about this. Ken of the Legion is here. Let's see. Loving the... Oh, yes. I've been watching... I love Batman, the animated series. Yes, very much so. I saw it the first episode when it started broadcast TV. I was in the... it was in the States at the time, right? Let's see. So, all right. So now, let's see. Now, what was I saying? Yes. So I see this film as a series of progressions. I see it in the context of the progression that I just described, which is the Superman Clark Kent relationship, or Kal-El Clark Kent relationship. So I feel like this is a progression in that direction. It's also a progression in terms of the Lois Superman relationship that we see in that context, and the sort of resolution of the story arc that was continued on in part two, and also in terms of Superman or Kal-El's character and his relationship vis-a-vis humanity, and how he chooses to intervene or to not intervene, whatever the case may be, and how this is in many ways similar but different to the dilemma that he faced in the first film. So let's see about how this film also has a sense of continuity, progressions, in a manner of speaking. Let's go to the quote-unquote villains of the piece. So Lex Luthor. We've mentioned Lenny, of course. Oh, the dude of steel. You're gonna get it. All right. So but Lex Luthor is back. It's great to see Lex Luthor back, I must say. And I must say that his taste for real estate is unquestioned. It's really quite remarkable. Before he had an underground cavern, was underneath Metropolis, New York metropolis. Now he has right. A high-rise penthouse, in a manner of speaking. I think it's atop the Metropolis Empire State Building, and so that's really cool, right? And so, I mean, no one thought to check. No one thought to go and check the attic there. Hey, you know, I'm sweeping the I'm what do you have a job? Yeah, I'm working the night shift at the Empire State Building. Yeah, do you think we should check the attic there? I think maybe just in case someone's there. And I heard some footsteps. Maybe someone's up there. I don't know. Should we check? Yeah, maybe maybe we should. No, we should check it out. But I'm kind of tired, and maybe we should go get a couple. Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's just get a couple calls. You don't have to check. I mean, I'm sure no one's up there. No one's up there. I hear footsteps, and I hear people like shouting and people fighting. Oh, no one's up there. That's good. All right, they're right out in the open. But anyway, I don't know how he was able to get that prime piece of real estate, or piece of prime real estate, whatever it is. But he was able to get it, and it's really great. Oh gosh, if there's anything to be said about the world of Superman and these films, it's that they live in such cool places. I love Clark Kent's apartment. I love Lois's apartment. I love Lois's apartment from the first two films. Because Ross Webster's apartment, I'd love to live in Ross Webster's apartment with the ski hill or something like that. Oh gosh. And then now we have Lex Luthor's lair, right? Oh man, where would you like to live, my dear friends? If you had your choice of one place within the world of Superman films that you could live, where would it be? I think for me, it would probably still be Lois Lane's apartment. I think that is the coolest looking apartment. And that garden. Wow, that's a really cool garden. But maybe second would be Lex Luthor's lair right here. Because my goodness, that is a lot of sunlight. You could hang after you wash your clothes in the laundry machine. You don't have to put them in the dryer. You could just hang them out to dry. You don't even have to hang them out outside. You can leave them inside because of the sunlight. It would create a kind of greenhouse effect that would maybe dry the clothes quickly. That's really cool. Wow, I'd love that. And then oh gosh, that's such a cool place. So anyway, this layer, Lex Luthor's layer, means that Lex Luthor is back. He's back because of the insight of Lenny and the remote control car with the what it says Lenny on the side, I think. My goodness. Could you imagine a car with your name on the side? That would be so cool. If I was driving a car. If I had a car and it said Daisuke on the side of it, I think people would be like, "What the heck is that? That's a really strange looking car." But for whatever reason, right, Lenny, that's a great car, and it has a function too because it helps to get those guards. They're not killed, my goodness, but they are out of the picture. Enough time for Lenny to free Lex Luthor, because what has Lex Luthor been having all in his mind? Nothing but one thing, which is destroy Superman. So we have that back, and it's great to see Gene Hackman who's like, destroy Superman. So
what can I say? This is another bit of continuity. It's great to see Lex Luthor back. It really is. And Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor back. Now, I would have I would have been so over the moon if they had brought Miss Tessmacher and Otis back. If they had brought those two back, it would have been, oh my goodness, it would have been perfect. It would have been so perfect. Lenny is great. Don't get me wrong. Any Lenny fans, I don't mean any disrespect, because I think Lenny is really quite cool. But there's something about, especially Otis. I've mentioned before, I am in the Otis fan club for life. And uh, I'm just, yeah, I'm just every time Otis is on screen, I'm happy. I'm so happy. So, oh, it would have been great to see Otis, but oh well, oh well. We cannot get everything we want in life. So, uh, right, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And what Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor needed was a little bit of Lenny. And so Lenny saved the day, in a manner of speaking. He still puts Lenny down, but they have a really interesting relationship, that's for sure. So Lex Luthor is back, and he has the plan to try to get back at Superman, and also at the same time kind of conquer or corner the nuclear arms dealer market. It's a very interesting thing. So there's no real estate deal here. There's no sense of trying to get. It feels like it's a whole out revenge tale. His plot is to get back at Superman. Now, I would assume that part of his plot to make this nuclear man would also entail, as we see a little bit in terms of what he does with um, with the arms dealers and the like. He sort of takes over their territory. So that's probably part of the plan all along. But the primary motive seems to be getting back at Superman. There's none of this motive of trying to, I don't know, conquer the real estate of California or anything like that. Not yet anyway. So that seems to be an interesting twist on the tale. So it seems to be kind of a personal revenge story on the part of Lex Luthor more than anything else. Although at the same time he does it with this Lex Luthor style and panache, which is wholly his own, wholly Gene Hackman. And so, what was I saying? What was I saying? Why did I open this bottle of sparkling water when I had a cup here? But anyway, okay, never mind. So, must have been my mind and my heart must have been preoccupied with excitement over Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. But in any event, we have yes, the plot seems to be wholly personal. Now, also, what's interesting too is, Lex Luthor is a very intelligent man, and very smart. But I didn't know that his expertise also extended to chemistry and the like. So maybe it did, and I just didn't catch wind of it. But the point is, he's also like a mad scientist here. He's like Dr. Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein. And he is creating his own monster, in a manner of speaking, complete with the way the set looks. And so, which is another interesting progression, one can say. He didn't have that Dr. Frankenstein uh, vibe about him in, say, Superman or Superman 2. But now he does, which is, but it makes sense. It kind of is seemingly consistent with the character. So that's something I appreciate very much. That's one thing. And then the other thing, too, is I like this idea of creation and the use of the Superman hair to create a clone of Superman and Nuclear Man. And so what I like about that is I like how it has that. It's almost in a way a mixture of Lex Luthor and Superman to combine, because we have Nuclear Man, who is from the same DNA as Superman, but also has traits of Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, including his voice. No, you have my voice. And so, in many ways, too, he's like a mixture of Lex Luthor and Superman. So right, so going back to my original comment about Mark Pillow's Nuclear Man, he's like a mixture of He-Man and Skeletor. So the He-Man and Skeletor of the Superman universe are indeed Superman and Lex Luthor. So in many respects, he is a mixture of He-Man, Superman, Skeletor, Lex Luthor, which I think is really cool. I wish this had been built up a little bit more. You know, he is the end result of all of our battles or something like that. You know, we are the ultimate the arch enemy relationship, Superman and Lex Luthor. So that would have been interesting to build that up a little bit more, to create a sense of epic scale proportion, and thus the fight between Nuclear Man and Superman is indeed a proxy war between Superman and Lex Luthor. So that would have been interesting to see built up. But as it stands, what happens is once Nuclear Man enters the picture, Lex Luthor sort of recedes into the background, kind of, because Lex Luthor isn't a physical villain; he is the intellectual villain. But Nuclear Man is the physical villain, complete with his roar. So that's so. But I guess my point is that I think uh, I think it would have been really cool had there been maybe some areas where we could have seen a stronger link, say, between Lex Luthor and Nuclear Man, because after Nuclear Man is defeated, right? We just see it's just, let's just pick up his car and then drop him off at the prison or something. So, and that's it, or drop Lenny off at the reformer school or something. But it would have been great to see a link between the two. In that way. Now, maybe that's just the nature of Lex Luthor, a character himself, because he is I admit, dispatched in a very similar way, in a kind of anticlimactic way, in a manner of speaking, in the first film. But there is a way that he's integrated into the sort of hero villain dynamics so cleverly in the second film, that wish that might have been employed a bit more. You know, he acts as a type of Greek chorus in the second film, and so it would have been interesting, say, to have his running commentary as the Superman and Nuclear Man are fighting, and then maybe Nuclear Man, much like Zod in the second film, maybe tries to almost turn on Lex Luthor, because there's a moment where Nuclear Man is saying, I'm the leader here. I'm the one who's powerful. So you're going to listen to me. So that gave a hint at the very start of there being tension between Nuclear Man and Lex Luthor, but that wasn't played up. It was there a little bit, but then it was dropped. It would have been interesting to have seen maybe Nuclear Man try to take over, and then Lex Luthor maybe saying to Superman there, we need to be allies once again. Will you help me? That would have been really cool. And then because Nuclear Man is out of control, and this is becoming a true nuclear threat. Maybe Nuclear Man's going to be, if we don't control him, I don't know, he has a nuclear heart or something. If he's not vanquished in time, then he's going to cause I don't know, nuclear meltdown or something like that. That would have been really, and that would have upped the ante in terms of the the parallel with the nuclear right, the nuclear threat and mutually assured destruction in the Cold War. So, and then it would have been great too. You have enemies, Superman and Lex Luthor now joining forces in order to combat a common enemy, which is right, the threat of nuclear annihilation. Oh, and then now we have, right, detente. Oh my goodness, the possibility, that would have been so fantastic. But right, as it so happens, as we have it right now, we have, right, Nuclear Man being created by Lex Luthor in this Dr. Frankenstein type of way, and so right, so it does mean that, right, Lex Luthor is maybe a little bit of he does recede into the background. But as I say, it wasn't like he was front and center in Superman and Superman 2. He was very much he was a great character. He was also in many ways a type of supporting character. And so perhaps in that way, his supporting character status in this film is consistent, which is totally fair game. But Again, it would have been very fascinating, especially because this is like when he's like a return of the characters in a many in a reunion in many ways. But interesting to see that dynamic played up a little bit more because at the end of the day, they do have a very fascinating relationship, Luther and Superman, which I think is touched upon at the very last scene between them when he's returned back to the prison or the jail or not jail, but when he says, "See you in 20." know, um, right there's a kind of mutual understanding that the two of them have, which I really like. I like how they have this maybe almost mutual respect towards each other. So it would have been interesting to see that relationship between the two of them play itself out a bit more, but we'll see. Which is why I think the relationship actually between Luther and Kal-El or Superman in the film Superman 2 is it's so robust, and I love that very much. But it then goes to the other villain in the piece, which is Nuclear Man, and I did speak about Nuclear Man at the start of this, and Mark Pillow, and if you are interested in what could have been in terms of the extended version or the uncut version of Superman for the Quest for Peace, you look to there's a lot of sources online in terms of what was cut out, in terms of whole characters that were cut out. You can go to the deleted scenes in in Superman for the Quest for Peace Blu-ray right here, and then you can go get all those wonderful scenes with how should I put it? Lex Luthor tries more than once, let me put it that way, to create something, and so you get these weird scenes going on. Could have been fascinating to see how it could have put together, but as it happens in terms of this final cut, we have Nuclear Man, all complete with the N on the chest there and the back on the cape there, and the nails and the scratching. So he's got a lot of superpowers. Nuclear Man does. He's able to levitate people. He's able to extend his nails. Dun, 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 dun. And he's got a great theme song. Dun, 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 dun. That's Nuclear Man. Dun, 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 ah! Dun, dun, ah! Dun, dun, right? So yes, so he's got a lot of superpowers, but his weakness is if he's in a place where there's no sunlight, then he loses his power. So what does that mean? If you close the curtains, he loses his power. If you trap him in an elevator, he loses his power. Although you think if the elevator's right, when he trap him in an elevator, he loses his power. If you close the curtain, he loses his power. So you have to think, if I were Superman, where would I want to fight Nuclear Man? Where would I want to fight Nuclear Man whose strength comes from his exposure to sunlight? So let's go to a place where there is no sunlight. Let's go to a place where there's no sun. So where can we go where there's no sun? So maybe where the weather is not so filled with sunshine. I don't know. Like so if um, oh, come with me, Nuclear Man! Fight me! I'm at the North Pole or something like that. So you got to fight, Nuclear Man in the Fortress of Solitude. And he's like, oh, it's no sun, no sun, and he's frozen or something like that. Or I don't know, maybe he goes to a place where it's raining all the time. I don't know. It would have been, maybe it would have been cool. Maybe he goes to London, England. He goes to London, and it's raining in London. It's like fighting, and Nuclear Man, you're not so strong when it's raining too. But then suddenly the rain stops and the clouds are parting. We see the sunshine shine through, and so he's trying to fight in London. But then he's like, the sunshine. Oh no! And the sun comes back, and he's fighting. And there's a final battle in London. That would have been really, or maybe I don't know. Uh, Maybe it could have gone to maybe some kind of I don't know, underwater cavern or something. But so the possibilities are endless. So if you think, right, if I'm Superman, I just have to get this guy to some place where there's no sunlight, and I win. I win. So just think about this. So just bring him, and then if he's interested in Lacey, or if he's interested in anyone in the Daily Planet, then that's your leverage, right? That's your leverage. So you can take him somewhere where there's no sun, and then you can defeat him. So I don't know, but anyway, maybe there could have been more more stuff that could have been done that way. But as it so happens, I think the fights are pretty good. In terms of what he does, in terms of the fight part one and the fight part two. What I like here is, I think there could have been a little bit more variety. I would say. I think it does get a bit repetitive as went towards the second half. I mean, it would have been interesting to see more, say, variety. I like when they're fighting on the moon, for instance, or slow motion and digging him down into the moon dust there, or pushing the moon to block the sun. That thought was really cool. But but there's a lot of stuff that is. I mean, again, if they could have gone to different locales, different environments, that would be really interesting. But I understand budget constraints, etc. I get that. What's okay? But then let's go to the strengths of this fight, which are and also I understand too the special effects and they might seem a bit ropey at times. I totally get that as well. But again, as Gizmorder says, it's part of the charm. Now, we have some other strengths too, which are again I say too. I love how we get to different places. And we hear Superman at the beginning speak, different language other than English, and also same thing. We hear him speak different languages. So that's very interesting. That's really cool. Shows his global appeal. And then also we have the weakness. We have Superman actually defeated. He's really defeated in this film. Now he's defeated by a villain, and if we think he has never been so defeated here, right? I think the closest he's come to being defeated is, say, maybe the tarred kryptonite in Superman 3, or even the bit with the kryptonite in Superman. He was never really quite defeated, I would say, in Superman 2. His defeat came from his own choice to go into the chamber there and expose himself to the red rays of the Kryptonian sun. But that wasn't because of Zod or Non or Ursa per se, although they did have a good fight in the Battle of Metropolis. Don't get me wrong there. But here we have a villain who actually is like in a fight, he defeats Superman. He defeats Superman, and Superman is down, and feared dead, and Clark Kent is noticeably affected. He's ill, he's sick, and he's aging. And there's a moment too where he's not just cold and like feverish, and so he's actually aging. We see him; his hair is almost falling out, and he's physically weak, almost to the point of death. And this is where the green crystal number 2 comes in, and we understand, or we can assume, that this is giving him the last burst of energy that he needs to recover and revive himself. But my point is that this is so, I think, shocking, and the depths in which he is defeated are really very low. I mean, he's fallen to such extreme depths. I would say more so than in Superman, and more so than in Superman 2. And indeed, more so than Superman 3, because Superman 3, he fell to a certain depth, but it wasn't necessarily life and death stakes. Here, we can sense in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, his defeat, his succumbing to the nail scratch by Nuclear Man, right? That actually has life and death consequence. He could have died had it not been but for the green crystal there. So actually, I think this is another sense of the progression in terms of the high stakes that we see in terms of the villain. Of course, right? We get it. Nuclear Man, as Jared, maybe his name is too much on the nose, or his costume or whatever. He looks like Dolph Lundgren or something. But right there is, but in terms of the theme or what he represents Superman's clone, and he also represents a threat to Superman, and also he represents a threat that is real, because it almost means that Superman and Clark Kent and Kal-El came that close to death, really, really close to death. So in that way, this is a really involving fight, which means that when he comes back, it's really satisfying, and it makes his return even more triumphant. Again, it would have been interesting to see that played up even more. I mean, there are some moments where Mark Pillow's Nuclear Man's attacks on Metropolis feel like a revisiting of the Battle of Metropolis that we saw in Part 2. That's cool and all, but again, I think for me, the key thing is I mean, the fights are interesting and the set pieces are interesting, don't get me wrong, but for me, it's this moment of him defeating Superman in a way that brings Superman actually to the point of near death. That is so like shocking to me. And the scene, the shot of the cape falling to, that sent shockwaves through me as a kid when I saw it in the theater. I cannot tell you enough just how sad that made me feel. So in that way, right? In that way, I get it. It is a bit, maybe some parts are somewhat nonsensical. Some parts maybe are campy, and some parts are maybe a bit. Maybe it could have done with a bit more. I don't know. Maybe exploration as to furthering of, say, the scenarios or situations. But that does not at all take away from the sheer, like, voluminous power that this film has, or that scene or this character has, because of the very nature of his character and how much of a threat he is to Kal-El and Superman. He is a big threat. So, so in that way, I do like it very much indeed. And Nuclear Man, for all of the characters' quote unquote flaws, or the way in which it's depicted and the special effects and the flaws, it still works in that way. I think quite triumphantly so. So let's see. All right. Um, Now scrolling down. Okay. Scrolling down. Oh yes, so let's see. There are shots, as Cooper Glover mentions, just shots of the New York skyline and the World Trade Center there as well. Yeah, that's right. Um, that's right. Zaruther mentioned Luther's Lair has an NES. That's right. You can see the NES, and in fact, I think when Lenny is being levitated and spun around, I think he's holding an NES controller. That's right. Cooper Clever said, I think I'd go with Robert Vaughn's apartment. Yes, yes. Um, Scrolling down here. Dennis A is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Scrolling down. Cooper Clever says, you have so many great comments here as always. You say, Daisuke, you do great analysis on all of these films. Thank you so much. I don't, my analysis is not so good, in my opinion. But you're very, very kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Not just Superman, but the Bond films we did, and the Star Trek films and others. Thank you so much. Thank you. Zyrother says, Nuclear Man, a man made from intense heat and radiation, has ice breath. Yes, that's right. And also, you know, I suppose it could be because of the, like, things that are made from radiation and heat can be exercised in a way that can create intense low temperature situations, I suppose. So like, I mean, it's the idea of a refrigerator, right? A refrigerator relies on energy, the consumption of energy, to create a low temperature situation. I could see that similar, but I understand what your point is, though. No, I totally get it. Let's see. Um, yes, Zyrother says, why didn't Superman just throw the elevator on the dark side of the moon or at the bottom of the ocean? No, he did throw it on the dark side of the moon, right? Although it's not really the dark side of the moon because the sun comes up. But in any event, I think that was the whole point. I think, but right, but it wasn't really right. I'll see you on the dark side of the moon. Da-da-oh. Let's see. Talking about Star Trek. Okay, wow. Oh, man, Superman, welcome to London. Nuclear Man. It's hideous. Oh, I love, I haven't been to London in so long. I think the first thing I do, if I were ever had the great fortune to ever visit London again, what would I do first? What I do first? Maybe even before I'd go to, like, I don't know, some store to see what the Arrow selections would be, or something. Try to get an Arrow title or two. Before I do that, I'd go. I I they have Lucasade still, right? In England, I love Lucasade. I just want to get a bottle of Lucasade, just open it, and just before I drink it, just get that aroma, the smell out of the bottle before. I love Lucasade so much. It's great. But, okay, the orange, the original orange flavor, whatever that flavor is. I don't even know what that flavor is called. It's just Lucasade. But let's see. Scrolling down here. Okay. Eric Pieper says Superman for the quest for a budget. Yes, I know. Had this film had the budget of, say, Superman 3, I just the possibilities, or even if it could have been extended, kept in at least some of that footage that was cut out. The possibilities. What could have been? What could have been? Oh man! And also, I think there at one point I know that they're trying to get Richard Donner back as well to direct. So could you imagine had Richard Donner returned? Oh my gosh! But oh well, oh well. I mean, as these things happen, as they say, these things happen the way they happen. Um, let's see. Yes, and it was I think a critical and financial disappointment. And so I don't know when. My hope is that I'm not sure when it'll happen. When will the tide begin to turn on on the film Superman for the Quest for Peace? I'm hoping one day it'll turn. Maybe if there is a retrospective release, or maybe if there's an extended cut release of Superman for the Quest for Peace one day on a, I don't know, 4K Blu-ray or something, that would be really cool to see. Maybe perspectives begin to emerge, saying, "Oh, actually, Superman for the Quest for Peace it's better than people said it was when it was, that sort of thing." As Agworther says in some of the comments here, maybe the reviews, I mean, they were negative and I think critical, but maybe they're a bit too harsh in some places. So hopefully one day the tide will turn and people will regard this film more favorably. I really hope so, because there are a lot of really great moments, and also as I don't know if I'd call it. I wouldn't say that I look at it as being so bad it's good. I don't look at it in that way. I think it's good. It is very good, and it's warm and earnest, and there's a progression, and it's not disconnected to the world of Superman films that we've seen, as I've tried to suggest in this discussion. And there are moments that are kind of bad, right? There are moments that are bad. There are effects shots that are kind of right, but uh, it doesn't. It's not to the point where it totally takes me out. There is a way in which I can still be with it, right? It's not as, say, smooth as my viewing of, say, Superman the movie, in terms of the combination of my reaction to the spectacle and special effects. The spectacle that is derived from seeing those great special effects scenes in Superman cannot be matched. And so in many ways, Superman for the Quest for Peace suffers from this very difficult comparison that will always be made between it as a film and Superman the movie. So that I think will be forever. But again, the it's been described too. This is a film that has a lot of heart. It has good intentions, and I think it has more than good intentions. It has so much heart and so much spirit, and the scenes actually go in places that are so extreme that I think it makes for some very compelling viewing. In fact, those that willingness to go to places of extremity in the world of Superman, for instance, seeing Superman nearly die, seeing this sort of a screwball comedy classic trope, or a dynamic in terms of Clark Kent and Superman, and Lacey and Lois, etc., and the choice that he makes. This takes Superman, the character, into many places that are really extreme, pushing the envelope, I would say. And so that alone, I think, helps me to bring it over the line, over the finish line in a very comfortable way. So, if it didn't have that, if the plot were quote unquote standard fare, or maybe not pushing the envelope or not exciting, and it was this type of special effects low budget fare that we had, then I would say that it would have been all in all a pretty disappointing experience. But with the strength of the film in terms of the plot and the character developments, it's not just good intentions. I think it's very, very strong. That makes the special effects stuff, if one calls it a weakness, that makes it, I think, not just quote unquote bearable or acceptable to me, but actually quite a fun time, because then I can, as I say, as Gizmorder and others have said, it adds to the charm of the film for me. So it has that appeal or effect on my viewing experience. And so even now, when I watch it, I don't kind of wince or anything. Oh, that's pretty bad. I kind of look at it and say, oh yeah, this is fine. This is fun. I get that, because I know that the film is going to take me to places that are really, really out there when it comes to the world and lore and myth of Superman as it's been built up since the late 70s. With the Richard Donner film, and then from there on, it'll just take me to this new place every time. So I enjoy that very much so. So it's not my favorite Superman film ever made. Definitely not. It's not my favorite Superman film ever made. But it is. It's a really good film. It is so fun and endearing, and filled with a lot of soul. Not just good intentions. It has so much soul to this that I think its power cannot be denied. I I would challenge anyone who is just 100% uh, critical of this film, bashing this film. If you feel that way, totally fine, totally legitimate, totally reasonable. And it's not my place to try to debate or to try to dissuade you from feeling that way. You're totally fine with that viewpoint. But I would just say, just for one moment, and not to try to debate in any way, just to provide a very friendly placed challenge, which would be, just look at that scene with Clark Kent in the Daily Planet offices, alone in that room, right, looking out, taking off his glasses, looking out, and just considering the ramifications of potential nuclear disaster in Jeremy and all this stuff, just looking out, just thinking. That is powerful stuff. That is powerful stuff. And it goes to the very heart of one of the strong, compelling reasons why Superman, I don't mean just Superman for the Quest for Peace, but Superman as a film franchise that began so triumphantly back in the late 70s and continuing on, why Superman is so everlasting the way Superman is in the hands of Christopher Reeve and company, is that it's moments like this where he's just standing there looking out, glasses off, just thinking, struggling, alone. And the music is just so subdued and quiet and just by himself. There's no flying motion. There's no special effect. There's nothing there. It's just him in the room. That's Superman to me. That is the stuff of like, wow, that hits me. And that's why I can say I'm not overly affected by the sort of ropiness of some of the effects shots. It's because of stuff like this that makes me, wow, this is great. Or it's the scene between Lois and Superman after they've gone on their flight. The flight part, right, it's emotional, but it's, right, I get it. It looks pretty, the back projection looks pretty back projection-y, right? But it's that scene between them on the patio afterwards. He says, it's not fair. I remember everything. That's the hook for me. And so for me, that's no special effect. The special effect is in that performance, and it's in the demeanor and manner and the look in the eyes. That's where it is, and it's there. It's there in these scenes in Superman for the Quest for Peace. Or give you another example, which is right when Perry White is taking back control of the Daily Planet after he says, "I got all the outstanding shares, so now I'm majority. I have majority control." That moment is brilliant. and you see the triumphant return of Perry White or something like that. Or um, I love the bit where Lacey is on the elevator after Clark has just, he's tried to get on, and she's on the elevator, but he wasn't able to get on the elevator. And you see Lacey's disappointed reaction. Oh, Clark, that's such a cool moment too. That's so perfect. That's like the ultimate encapsulation of the Lacey Clark relationship right there. Oh, Clark, it's just that close, but it just wouldn't, right? Just wasn't meant to be. So those are the places that resonate so powerfully for me throughout the world of Superman, and they are here in like heaping tablespoons in Superman for the Quest for Peace, and you saw them throughout the films, right? From Superman the movie, with the and oh, I'm even right. I've forgotten another scene, the Smallville, that Smallville scene, and the return to the Kent farm, and there's the stuff before with the special effect, and he's looking through the wall, and it looks a little bit ropey, and the green crystal, I think, looks a little bit kind of prop. It looks a little bit too much like a prop. I get that, but the moment afterwards, when he's out in the farm and swinging the baseball and the crib and all that, and he said, "I'm not going to sell to anyone. I don't want to have another shopping center." That's the stuff of magic. Wow, wow, what a great scene that is. And to see that in that way is so great. Like Smallville in this film, that had that. It felt so. It felt so like Smallville of Superman the film, more so than Superman 3 did. And Superman 3 had most of its film take place in Smallville. You know what I mean? So it was just, that's just the magical stuff right there. So that is, I think, in that's my way of trying to close this out, which is to say, it's the magic is right there. It's always been there in Superman for the Quest for Peace. I would say it's always been there. It's just a matter of maybe, hopefully, one day, if the tide can turn, and we can see a reassessment of this film, maybe with a new 4K release or Blu-ray, whatever, extended for. And I say the same for Superman through all with right warts and all, because I know that each of these films had a very troubled production history. Of course, Superman for the Quest for Peace notwithstanding. Oh, definitely. So having a retrospective, thorough look back on what went right and what went wrong with Superman for the Quest for Peace. I mean, honest, earnest appraisal. Totally there. I'm totally up for that. If whatever the powers that be somewhere in Blu-ray, 4K executive offices, whatever the decision makers, if someone out there is able to make a decision, so yes, we're going to release Superman for the Quest for Peace in a full extended special collector's edition, all the stuff, an honest making of document. We don't have to have one of these, right? It's not, oh, it was great, it was great. No, but it's something that's just going honestly saying this was wrong, this was a bad choice, this was a bad decision, something like that. But it ended up in this sort of way. We understand some of the performance players weren't happy with some of the choices. They tried to get certain location shots, but the producers execs said no because of wanting to save on the budget or something. That kind of assessment. It's in need of that sort of stuff, bringing it out in the open. But then to show the film, warts and all, but also in its full glory, because it does have those moments, and a lot of moments, glorious moments, that make it worthy, so worthy, as a Superman film. That's my 2 cents on this, which is Superman for the Quest for Peace. All right. So that's it, I think, as far as Superman for the Quest for Peace is concerned. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say or planning to say. I'm sure there might have been more things I'm just not remembering, but so yes, so thank you so much. This, I think, will mark the end of our live stream discussion series as far as the Superman films go. I know that there are many other Superman films. I know this, and even in this set, I know there's one other Superman film. We're not going to talk about those, at least in the for the time being, because it was my plan just to focus on the Superman film with Christopher Reeve. And I understand that there is some continuity between some other films and say this Christopher Reeve films. I get that, but I do want to bring it to a close here, at least for this live stream discussion run. I'd like to have more live stream discussions in the future. I haven't quite yet made up my mind. I've narrowed the possibilities down to a few, but I'll announce that as soon as I'm able to, very soon. But this won't be the last live stream discussion on this YouTube channel, that's for sure. But as far as the Superman discussions go, this is where we go. This is where we go here. I want to say I was I uh, I had so much fun. I had so much fun during these last, whatever it was, couple months, and including Superman for the Quest for Peace. All of these films were films that I saw so many times as a kid, so many times. And even now I watch, and they don't feel like quote unquote old films to me. They feel like modern films because I'd seen them as a kid, and when I saw them, they were like these are new, fresh films, and that I still have that feeling to this day. And I understand that they were made whatever it was, 40 years ago, even more so, perhaps. So that is that blows my mind in a lot of respects. So and in many ways too, because of that, it matches my own, or it's very similar to my own age, right? So it's like they came out around the same time that I was born. So in that way too, that I have a kind of close relationship with them in that way. So they mean a lot to me. They really, really mean a lot to me. Now I'm not the biggest Superman comics expert in the world. And I'm not the biggest comics expert in the world, so I don't have those expertise with me, unfortunately. I'm sure if I did, that would further enhance my appreciation and love for these films all the more. But through these conversations, it was my hope that I could try in some way to convey that a little bit of that feeling of what I had and have for each of these films in its own way, including Superman for the Quest for Peace. I I do love and cherish this film very much. So I want to say thank you so much, and we will end it here. We can leave the discussion free for any remaining comments. I'll be here for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we will go from there. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Scrolling down here. So sorry, I know I skipped over a number of comments. I apologize. Thanks so much for stopping by the way. I really appreciate it. Really do. Um, it's so lovely to hear your comments about these. Um, Omesh says, I like Supergirl's flying scenes the most from the original era of superhero films. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a type of ballet quality. I love how she's, you could tell she's like, it's like she's free and she's enjoying it. Just for the first, she's just having so much fun, and it's like this moment of pure elation and just lovely. And the Jerry goes the pew da, 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 the pew da, 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 da. Oh, it's so cool. You're right. You're right, Omish. Well said. Let's see. Gizmortar says, thanks, Dice Game, for another interesting and fun live stream discussion focusing on a really interesting film. I think this is the first full discussion of a canon film on the channel. I was thinking it would be so cool also to talk about one day. I don't know if I can do it, but one day talk about the Sho Kosugi ninja films. Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, and I mentioned it, Ninja 3 denomination, in terms of the aerobics scenes. So maybe there's hope yet. I'd love to talk about those. Maybe a live stream, the ninja films live stream. I don't know. Very cool. But, all right. Good night, my dear friend Gizmortar. Talk to you again very soon. Let's see, scrolling down. So Kubrick Lever said, I don't know why Superman's cape move when he's in space above the Earth. Yeah, yeah. Very good. Zyrother says maybe for the 100th anniversary of Superman, all the films can get ultimate editions. Yeah, perhaps. Um, Neo Blissy says it's been an extreme honor being on this live stream today. I was happy that Daisuke's. I loved the research paper I did about this movie. No, I did. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for sending it to me. And you said I look forward to seeing where Daisuke goes next. Thank you so much. Yes. Sucked is here. It's nice to see you. You should do the Death Wish canon films. Oh yeah, Death Wish 3 is Death Wish 3 is a personal favorite of mine. So yes, it's a that's a pretty that's a film that goes in so many places. Wow. Oh my gosh, Death Wish. But anyway, yes, that could be possible. Although I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh yes. I was gonna say someone mentioned. Uh, I've got a lot of questions about. I got a lot of questions about this the Sight and Sound poll list. What Daisuke? What do you think about it? Are you going to do a video? I guess I could do a video on it if there's interest in it. I suppose I how I react to it. I guess, but um, and the news about the quote unquote new greatest film of all time, at least for the next 10 years, I suppose. But I was very surprised by the number one choice. Very surprised by it. I wasn't expecting it. I really wasn't expecting it. It came out of nowhere for me. So wow, that's number one. Wow. And so, but then I was very happy about it because I think it's a very, very, very complex film. I was maybe I was personally anticipating number one for this next 2022 poll. I was anticipating it maybe being Tokyo Story. I was hoping actually Deep Down would be Tokyo Story. But Tokyo Story is still up there, so I'm very happy to see that. Also, I was so surprised to see Beau Travail as well. Wow, that was very interesting. And also what was that? Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Wow, I admit I thought the film was very good, but I didn't realize just how much of an impact it appears to have had on the critics, like it did, at least as reflected in this poll. Now, I'm be very interested to see how the film will play over the next 10 years. So I would say that I was also very surprised by a number of what some people are calling omissions. Like I think The Godfather Part 2 isn't on the list, which I was shocked by. I was so shocked by that. And also I think Raging Bull isn't on the list as well, which I was very. I'm talking about the critics poll. I know Raging Bull's on the directors poll list. Godfather 2 is also on the director's poll. Actually, the director's poll list is also very interesting as well. So, I think 2001: A Space Odyssey, right, for the director's poll, which that's a very interesting choice as well. But what else was there? I was also like, I would have thought that in terms of like Parasite also was there, I think in the 90s or something like that, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was really great. I think that Parasite as a film, I think strikes a chord that is so apropos of a moment right now that we're living in, and I think it has a kind of I would say that perhaps that film could have a lot of longevity over the course of these next 10 years. So I look forward to seeing how the response for that film will, as I expect, continue and perhaps even grow over time, because it's a tour de force, and it's filmically it's brilliant as well. So let's see. I think that's just my general impressions, I suppose. But I was, yeah, I was. Right, Kubrick lovers. Some think they shouldn't choose films that are newer than 5 years old. I can, I don't, I I can see that. I can see that kind of perspective. So, uh, right, because it's kind of hard, what is, and this is true for I think for anyone, myself included, right? How my feelings on a film are they? Is there something about this film that really, for whatever the reasons are, that really speak to me in terms of my regard for it as my favorite film, or as a film that I regard as quote unquote one of the greatest ever, for whatever reason? There's something about that, and I can look at it in terms of the environment, the context, whatever, or is my reaction somewhat to do with that, but also perhaps even imperceptible to me directly, is my reaction knee jerk? And when I see knee jerk, I mean, is my reaction something that is not necessarily wholly my own, or is it something that is maybe influence from other critics or reviewers that I hold in high regard? They like it, therefore I, by osmosis, say that I too like it. Now that is always a tricky thing for me, and I get that. Now I'm not saying that this is true for all the choices on the list or whatever. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying for me, if I were to try to make this a list of my own choices, then that would be the big struggle for me, which is how could I differentiate that in my own mind? What is what is really my view, or what is something that is maybe I think I like, but do I really like it? So that is always the process for me in terms of that. And I don't always get it right in that context, in that regard as well. So, uh, and I could assume that that type of, or I would like to think that that type of consideration was on the minds of the people who made the selection as well. I mean, it would have been one of many considerations to have made. I totally appreciate that, but yeah, that's the way it goes, I suppose. But I as far as the other choices, I like the I actually, I think it's what's the phrase? Citizen Kane is in many ways, it's been called the greatest film ever made for so long. It's like, is it really the greatest film ever? Is it, sometimes it gets into that zone, that type of thing. Um, but I think for me, I can say as I get older, Citizen Kane's uh, uh, draw and appeal grows exponentially for me. When I was young and I first saw the film, I didn't get it. I thought it was just, what? Why is this considered so? And then just it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and especially now, like I don't know about you, but I think uh, Citizen Kane is a great film for many reasons. One of the reasons, in my view, is it has this uncanny ability to have as its center character a character that is both heroic and villainous at the very same time. And you put that person in the very heart of American history and world history, in the context of politics, in the context of social sweeping change, and also in the context of media. And you think, my goodness, this is more powerful and perhaps even more volatile than I had first given credence. And therefore, for that reason and others, it is a volcano of a film. Citizen Kane is a volcano of a film. And no wonder some people thought it was even dangerous when it was released for the first time. So it is, I think for that reason, if Citizen Kane had been number one, I would have been very, oh, wow, that would have been amazing. Yes, I get that. And then, but it's still it's still there. So it's great. Vertigo, I've mentioned many times how it is. I go back and forth. Is it my favorite film of all time, or is it Late Spring, or even A Brighter Summer Day? I go back and forth. The Vertigo. I love that film. Uh, even before it was announced, right? I love that film so much, just so much, and just there are moments I just don't get, and I love it's uh imperfect perfection, or it's perfect imperfection. Yeah, I like that. Vertigo is perfect imperfection, which is, I think, the ultimate way to describe its spiral like structure. As it's a swirl, it's a confusing roller coaster, and in many ways, it's a type of beautiful mess. It's a mess of poetry, or it's a poetic mess, and it's meant to be that way. And it's very, very disturbing, and it speaks a lot to a kind of an integral part of cinema and psychology. It has this really uncanny way of making us be on the side of the subjective and objective at the same time. I don't know how it does it. It's amazing. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the very, very briefly on the sight and sound listening. But Godfather 2 is not on. I was just, oh gosh, Godfather 2. I listened to part of the Godfather film score afterwards, sort of to pay homage and respect to Godfather 2, because I said, it should be there. But anyway, let's see. All right, so I've got to go in about a minute. So let's see. So last comments, and then we got to go. So Juan Espinoza is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. It's great to see you. And let's see. So all right. So my dear friends, thank you so much. And I will see you I will make another announcement. I don't know when, but as soon as I decide the next series of live streams, let's do it. You and I, if you're interested. I'll try to make something, the theme, something that will be have a kind of something that people will be interested to check out, I hope. And so going from there. But my dear friends, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. We will see each other again, I know, hopefully very, very soon. But until then, my dear friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, my dear friends. Thank you, and cheers.